As Ruben said earlier on, thank you so much to everyone who came here last Sunday for Tri-Church, our second birthday. And we had 670 people here throughout the day, connecting with God, connecting with each other. It's so exciting, the potential of that. 670 people going for it in their faith and in their life. Next Sunday, we're going to kick off a new message series that we're calling Frequency. And it's how to tune into God's voice. I don't know about you, but I want to hear God better in my life. Because when you hear the creator of the universe speak into your life, it just helps you in your relationships, helps you for direction for your life, helps you in your studies. It just helps in life. So we're going to look at some of the ways in which we can tune into God so that you and me can hear God better for our lives. But tonight, what I wanted to do, the last couple of weeks, we've been doing a bit of a sort of a churchy series. I'm looking about the nature of the church. I don't know what your experiences of church are. I've been doing church for most of my life, actually. Some good experiences, some not such good experiences. But the church is primarily God's sort of delivery system of his love into the world. It's the body of Christ. It's how the world will see really what God is like through the church, his body. And when the church is firing on all cylinders, nothing beats it really. In fact, over the summer, I was down in the Barbican, which is our sort of seafront here, our harbour area, which many of you will know. And when I was there, I saw one of these tall ships that comes in every year. It's called Caskalot. Did anyone see Caskalot this summer? Anyone see it? Yeah, there's this sort of tall ship. I think it goes on a tour around the world or something, and it lands in Plymouth. And as I walked past Caskalot, I sensed the Lord sort of speaking to me and saying, Olly, that's what the church is meant to be like. And I was like, in my heart, I was like, what do you mean, Lord? And actually, Caskalot, when you look at these beautiful old tall ships, when they're out on the high seas on the ocean, they're the most, well, I think they're the most stunning things. In fact, we've got a picture here of Caskalot when it's out on the oceans. Just this stunning ship and all the sails up and everything like that. And the wind is just blowing in it and it's cutting through the waters. And some of these old tall ships, some of them required a lot of people to sail them. In fact, HMS Victory, which was the ship that Nelson sailed, I said it was in the Battle of Waterloo this morning. It was actually the Battle of Trafalgar that Nelson sailed. That galleon, that tall ship, needed 850 people to sail it. Everyone playing a part in enabling this incredibly beautiful boat to cut across the oceans and often to overcome adversaries in battle. And I think really that's a picture of what the church is meant to be like. Everyone playing their part, everyone in it together, off on the ocean, cutting through the high seas, having adventures in life. A wonderful sort of imagery. In fact, you will never get a better life than life with God and with his people, the church. Even though you may have had bad experiences of church in your life, when the church is working well, it's God's designed delivery mechanism for life in all its fullness, when it's flourishing and when it's working well together. If you want to go fast in life, go alone. But if you want to go far in life, go together with others. Or as the writer to the Ecclesiastes said, he said, 2 are better than 1. They get a good return for their work. And a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. And I don't know about you, but I think many of us in life, we can settle for standing on the shore like I was that day, looking at Caskalot. Others of us, we might get in the boat, but we just stay in the harbour. But Caskalot wasn't built for staying in the harbour. It was built for the open seas, for the ocean. And that's what you and I are created for. Other people, even when you go solo across the Atlantic, the great explorers of history, actually they've had an amazing team behind them, helping them in their different expeditions. And I want for myself, I want an adventure-filled life, the best life that I can possibly lead. And I want that for you and us together as a church family. And it'll look a little bit like that ship, that tall ship, where we all get on board together, we all play our part in it together, and we allow the Spirit of God to fill the sail of our soul and blow us along through the waters. Now, I'm going to open with a little prayer. One of the sort of historical figures of this city is Sir Francis Drake. Some of you may have seen his monument on the Hoe. In fact, Sir Francis Drake, he was a bit of a pirate in all truthness. When you Google him, he wasn't necessarily the greatest character, but he was the second person in history, I think, to circumnavigate the globe. And one of the things that he's well known for is he played his game of boule on Plymouth Hoe before he went out and they annihilated the Spanish Armada. No disrespect to any Spaniards who are here this evening. And Drake once prayed an amazing prayer, which I'm going to kick off this talk with tonight. And you can maybe appropriate this prayer for yourself and just receive this. I love this prayer. Drake said this: "Disturb us, Lord, when we're too pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have come true because we dream too little, when we arrive safely because we sail too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, when with the abundance of things we possess, we've lost our thirst for the waters of life. Having fallen in love with life, we've ceased to dream of eternity. And in our efforts to build a new earth, we've allowed our vision of the new heaven to dim. Disturb us, Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wilder seas where storms will show your mastery. Where losing sight of land, we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizon of our hopes and to push into the future in strength, courage, hope, and love. This we ask in the name of our captain, who is Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen." Well, how might you and I begin to sort of live that sort of life of adventure, where we're going to head out onto the open seas, where we're going to see new lands that we might never before have dreamed about before, where we're going to experience something of the power and the presence of God in ways that we might never have experienced before? Well, as you probably know, there's loads of pictures of the church in the scriptures. The picture of the family is one picture that some of the writers of the Bible use about the nature of the church. The relationship of a husband with a wife is another picture of the church and relationship with God. But one that I'm going to turn to in the scriptures in Romans chapter 12. St. Paul had been speaking to this church in Rome, trying to encourage them. A load of people, a little bit like you and me, trying to sort of muddle our way through life following Jesus. And he gives them this picture of what the church is meant to be like, that of a body. Romans 12. The first 12 chapters of, the first 11 chapters of Paul's letter to the church in Rome, he speaks about the amazing grace of God. Out of his love for you and me, that he would come in the person of Jesus to die for us, so that we could be forgiven, set free, a purpose put in our heart, and a fire in our belly to live lives for God. And he says this at the beginning of chapter 12. He says, therefore, can you say therefore? There's loads of therefores in the scriptures. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. You might have found as you go through life that the world is continually trying to squeeze you into its mold. Just the way some of your friends are around you, some of the stuff we're watching on TV, some of the stuff on Instagram and Facebook, all the time trying to squeeze us into its mold. Some of it good, some of it not so good. St. Paul says, don't get conformed by this world. Instead, he said, be transformed. Can you say transformed? Transformed by the renewing of your mind. Do you find your mind goes all over the place quite a lot of the time? Do you find your thought life gets carried away in certain directions, some of it good, some of it's not such good? Do you find sometimes that you're filled with insecurities, or sometimes you're filled with pride and arrogance? Be transformed, Paul says, by the renewing of your mind. Allow your mind to be fed with God's stuff, good stuff, life-giving stuff, upbuilding stuff. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is. His good, can you say good? Pleasing, can you say pleasing? And perfect will. Can you say perfect? So often the devil will want to tell you that God isn't good, that he's not perfect, and his will and way for your life is not great. That's a lie from the pit of hell. God's will is good, it's pleasing, and it's perfect. In fact, you'll never develop a better life than the life that God has planned for you and me. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, don't think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment. There's humility in the scriptures all the way. Humble. It's not thinking less of it's not thinking that you're bad or anything. It's just thinking of yourself less and thinking of others more. But rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you. Just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we who are many form one body. You might not look like it, but if you're a Christian here today, you're all connected with each other, with this amazing mystical body united together. In Christ, we who are many form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts. Again, you might not feel very gifted, but God has gifts for each one of us. He's called you and me for a purpose and a reason. You're not a random creation. You're part of his body. He's got a function for each one of us, a role for each of us to play. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. If a man or woman's gift is prophesying, let them prophesy. Prophecy is forthtelling the good things of God into the world around us and into the lives of each other. If it's serving, let them serve. If it's teaching, let them teach. If it is encouraging, God, we need encouragement. Do you know where the word encouragement comes from? The Latin, coraticum, the heart. We all need to have heart put into us. Each of us, we need courage in life. We need heart. Let them encourage. If it's contributing to the needs of others, let them give generously. If it's leadership, let them govern diligently. If it is showing mercy, let them do it cheerfully. The church is meant to be this most amazing, beautiful, like that ship there. Every sail up, the wind of God filling it, everyone playing their part. So how can we begin to enter into that life that St. Paul seems to envision there? This amazing picture of a life full out for God. The first thing is you've got to jump on board. Can you turn to your neighbor and say, jump on board, jump on board. Can we have our first slide, please? Jump on board there. He says this, I urge. Can you say urge? It doesn't. There's no more urgent language really than that. I urge you to offer your bodies as living sacrifices. Offer your bodies as living sacrifices. In life, we will never know what it is like to live with God until we've given our life to God. We'll never know ultimately what it's like to live with God until we've given our life to God. Like on that ship, you'll never know what it's like to sail in a tall ship until you get on board and you begin stepping out and sailing. You'll never know what it's like just looking from the shore. You've got to get into the boat. I was brought up in a church-going background. Some of you will know this, and some of you will have heard my story. Church was fine. In fact, I quite enjoyed church. I sort of sang in the choir and things like that. But then I sort of got on with the rest of my week. It didn't really play a part in the rest of my life. The only spiritual experience I'd say I had when I was growing up was when I was a 9-year-old boy. I was sent to a boarding school, and at this boarding school there was one of the boys who was sort of a committed Christian, and he got his father to pray with me one day. We were in a car in the school car park. You'd sort of get had up for this sort of stuff nowadays, but it was okay then, it was all right. And we were in the car, and he said, right now, Ollie, we're going to pray. And I didn't really know what he meant, because prayer for me was something that was done by the priest in church and wearing sort of funny clothes, slightly funnier than what I'm wearing tonight, and sort of these and thys and thous and set prayers. And I was thinking all this stuff in my mind when he put a hand on my shoulder and he started to pray for me. And all I can say is that at that moment, this incredibly peaceful and powerful presence sort of descended upon me. And the words that were going to come out of my mouth to say, I don't know what you're talking about, I just started praying these spontaneous words, what I now, and what the Bible describes as praying in the Spirit or praying in tongues, a spiritual prayer language that sort of came from deep within me. And I was like, whoa, what is that? Wow. And after a couple of minutes of praying in this strange language and connecting with God and experiencing this presence, I just started then to cry. I think I was a bit overwhelmed. And he said, right now, Ollie, I want you to continue to ask God to help you to pray in this prayer language he's given you and start to read the scriptures and sort of engage with God. But after a couple of nights of kneeling down next to my bed in the dormitory, I went to this boarding school, and not experiencing this presence and not praying in this funny language, I think I was always aware that someone might come in and kick me or something like that, or tell me, what are you doing? So I just sort of gave up on it. And then life just continued. I went to university and came out the other end at university and got on a graduate training scheme with Sotheby's Auction House. And it was very prestigious. There was only 3 people in our year across the world who got onto the London graduate training scheme. And on one level, it was amazing. But on the other level, I started to think, is this it? Is this what life's about? Do I work my way up now and sort of become a junior director or something and marry and have 2.4 kids and a brown and white Springer Spaniel? Is that what life's ultimately about? I mean, because that's great on one level, but difficult things happen in life as well. And around that time, some challenging things happened in my wider family. And I'm sure some of you have experienced challenges in life. And if you haven't yet, you sure will do. And I started to think, is life this bizarre lottery of good luck and bad luck? Because the good luck can be great, but the bad luck can begin to strip away everything that you've built up. And I started to think, actually, I don't know if I want to follow through with this thing. Well, what's the point in building a life if there's no ultimate meaning? So I started to investigate about the different meanings that there are out there to life. I originally studied philosophy at university, and much of Western philosophy has helped us to get to where we've got to in our thinking today, but in and of themselves, they're incomplete systems of thought. Like, you won't find ultimate fulfillment through Western philosophy. Then I started to investigate different religions, and many of them and many of the principles and attitudes of those religions, I think, yeah, amen, those are great. But there are also one or two things that I thought, I'm not sure about that. And then I remembered that man who had prayed for me all those years before, and I thought there was something going on there, a little bit different to the Christianity perhaps that I'd been brought up with, but there was something otherly, something outside of everyday existence that was happening there, some spiritual connection that was really going on. And to cut a long story not much shorter, I ended up bumping into this boy's father at a church service that I went to. I started visiting different churches, stayed in a couple of monasteries, and I bumped into this boy. I hadn't seen him for about 15 years. And he introduced me again to his father, and I met his father, and his father prayed for me again. And as he prayed for me, a little bit like we do here in our services, once again I experienced that peace and that power and that presence of God. It was like a homecoming. It was like, wow, there is meaning, there is purpose, there is a God who is for us and with us. Doesn't mean that everything's going to be easy in life, but there is a purpose. There is a person who knows you and knows me and loves us. And after that, I went to a conference the following day, actually, and there was a woman speaking who's a missionary in Hong Kong, a lady called Jackie Pullinger. And I have to admit, between ourselves, and Jackie, apologies if you're watching this, she was a little bit odd, actually. Because the first thing she did when she stood up is she screamed at everyone, and she said, "What are you all doing here, sitting on your behinds, listening to me?" And I thought, well, I think that's exactly what we're meant to be doing. I thought we had come to listen to you. And it was like level 20 Christianity. It all went above my head. But at the end of it, there was a time of singing, a time of worship like we do here. And during that time, I sensed God sort of in my conscience, sort of speaking to me and saying, "Olly, you've done some good things in your life and some not such good things. How about now you invite me into your life? Jump on board life with me. Take a tentative step across that gangplank and into the boat of life with me. And help me to show you now what life, true life, is all about." And at the end of the time of worship, she said, "I'd love you all to close your eyes." Not you guys now. She said, "I'd love you all to close your eyes." And she said, "If any of you would like to give your life to Jesus or invite him into your life, I want you to remain standing while everyone else sits down." And I remained standing with my eyes tightly shut, and I sensed God saying, "It's now or never, Olly." So I stood there, and I could hear people around me sitting down. And I followed her in a little prayer like we often offer people the opportunity here, and we will at the end of this service, to take that first tentative step to get in the boat of life with Jesus. And after that, I suddenly had a voracious appetite to know more about God. On one level, I knew about Jesus from when I was growing up. I knew about the Bible and prayer, but I didn't really know, and now I had a hunger to know. In fact, most of the Bible verses that I now memorize came from that year after that. It was almost as if I was starving spiritually. I couldn't get enough of this book. I literally just sort of ate it up, just the truth, the life that was coming off it. It was incredible. I went on an Alpha course, and if you've never done Alpha before, we're kicking off this course this Wednesday, 7:30 in the church. Lovely supper, opportunity to watch a video about some of the foundational aspects of the Christian faith, time for discussion to ask any question. And I found that so helpful. So many misconceptions and preconceptions I had about Christianity that were suddenly put right, and I found my faith growing and developing. And ever since then, it's grown from there, and I've had my ups and downs and twists and turns. But there's nothing that beats it of doing life with Jesus. And some of you tonight, as you look in, you've never properly jumped on board. You've looked from the shore. You've looked from the outside. Maybe even like the guys down in the Barbican, you've perhaps even got on the boat a little bit and potted around, but you've never got out onto the open seas before. You've never really stepped into life with Jesus, and maybe that's your next step tonight. And at the end of this talk, there's an opportunity to go for it and to do that, to give your life to Jesus, to sign up for life with him. In fact, it's the only life that will last into eternity. Firstly, jump on board. Secondly, hold on tight. Can you turn to your neighbor and say, hold on, hold on? The only problem with living sacrifices is that they tend to crawl off the altar. And if you've been doing the Christian life for any period of time, you'll find you begin to drift. You'll find that you get bored from time to time. You'll find that you get distracted from time to time. In fact, yesterday, my wife and our two kiddies, we were trying to get out the house to go for a cycle ride together. I mean, if you've ever had children, they're a nightmare. Will you please get your shoes? Get your shoes. Get your shoes. Will you please get your shoes? Get your shoes. How many times do I need to say, get your shoes, get to the front door now? I mean, it's exasperating, but we're the same. God looks down from heaven and says, will you get your shoes? Please, don't, no, this is the way, this is how life, we drift. So the important thing is we've got to grab hold of something to stop us from drifting too far. Who of you here has ever been down to the Mayflower Step? Anyone been down to the Mayflower Step? Anyone here? Amazing. Okay, well, if you haven't been to the Mayflower Step, do go down there. In 1620, a ship left Plymouth called the Mayflower. We're celebrating the 400th anniversary of the sailing of the Mayflower ship next year. It's these band, actually they were seeking spiritual freedom to express their faith in free ways without control from the national church at the time. And they set sail from here and headed across to America. They were amazing pioneers. And if you go down onto the Mayflower Step, there's a little 2 columns there, and there's a British flag and an American flag there. And then you can go out, there's like a little promontory when you go into the Mayflower Step. And when you go into it, and I always take friends and tourists there, there's a plaque that goes all the way around it. And on the plaque, it's got little drawings, and it's got accounts from their journals of the journey that they took across the Atlantic. And it begins on the left-hand side, and it describes when they left Plymouth Harbor here, when they left the Barbican. And then you follow it round, and then it ends on the right-hand side with a little account from their journal when they arrived in Plymouth, America. I mean, what became Plymouth, America. And it's very moving. It said that they got down on their knees, and they praised the God in heaven that they had been enabled to get there, to get to America. It's very moving. It's like another chapter of Acts. But I've always get captivated by one story on that plaque. And it's an account of a young man on that ship called John Howland. And I'll read it this is what it says on the plaque. It says this: in a mighty storm, a lusty young man. I think lusty meant something slightly different then than it does today, or maybe not, I don't know. A lusty young man called John Howland, with a roll of the ship, was thrown into the sea. But he caught hold of the topsail halyards and held his hold, though he was sundry fathoms under the sea. Can you imagine that in the middle of the Atlantic in 1620? You've got this halyard and you're under the sea and it's freezing and you're holding on for dear life, till he was hauled up by the same rope back onto the boat. And I think that's a wonderful picture of what life is like with us. If you've been going the Christian life for any time at all, you'll find from time to time it feels as if you're thrown out of the boat. Some of you, in fact, you're just holding on now. And the question is, are you going to hold? Don't let go of that rope. Some of you are trying to hold, you're discouraged. Others of you, you get distracted. But you've got to have those things like John Howland where you hold on. The interesting thing about the life of John Howland is that he has now 2 million descendants in America that can trace their roots back to his name, including 3 presidents of America. If John Howland had let go of that rope, we wouldn't have had all those descendants. And similarly for you and me in our Christian faith, if we can just hold on through those times of difficulty, what might be the legacy that lies before us, after us, of people, families, careers, the world around us, if we keep holding on to our faith, particularly in those times of difficulty. And I think we can hold on to those ropes, in a sense, that metaphor of a rope, by getting disciplines in our life. In fact, it's where we get the word disciple from, or maybe vice versa. We get the word disciple from the word discipline. To follow Jesus is to be a disciple of Jesus, a follower of Jesus, and there are disciplines in that. I hate the word discipline. It's a very sort of non-21st century sort of word. None of us like discipline. But we need to be disciplined to get any fruit in any area of our life. If you want to get fit, you've got to be disciplined. If you want to get a good degree, you've got to be disciplined. If you want to do anything worthwhile in life, you need to be disciplined, and it's the same in our faith. And we have 4 little disciplines here as a church. In fact, we only really do 4 things as a church. We wanted to try and keep church as simple as possible. Not simplistic, but simple so that anyone can jump on board. Our first little lens is personal journey. Can you say personal journey? Yeah, we want everyone, in a sense, like that picture, to have jumped on board, to know that they know Jesus, and then to have started self-feeding. You are responsible for your spiritual life. I'm responsible for my spiritual life. You're responsible for your physical life, to take action. And for us here, just trying to get to grips with the scriptures, carving out a little time in our diaries to pray and to connect with God. And we can help you with that, to grow in that. The second thing is Sunday services. Can you say Sunday service? It's really key for the family of God to get together every week. I mean, we're quite a big sort of crowd here now, but there's a sense that when you come together to do that, you get built up a little bit. I don't know about you, but I come to Sundays and sometimes I'm contemplating whether or not I'm going to go to church or not. But actually, as I'm paid to be here, I do get here. But I don't always feel it. But then I get here and then the worship begins to kick off and I get one of the coffees or 2 or 3 coffees. The caffeine begins to hit and I've chatted with someone and I get a muffin. And before long, my faith is beginning to rise. And some of you will feel that. So the important thing is actually to ensure that that's just in the diary. It's non-negotiable. That when Sunday comes around, we're not questioning, am I going to go to church tonight? No, do I feel it? No. It's a handhold. It's a topsail halyard that I'm just not letting go of because I know that I want to keep in that boat. And it's going to help me to get back in the boat if I fall out of the boat from time to time. The third thing is small group. Can you turn to your neighbor and say, you need to be in a small group? Turn to your neighbor and say, you need to be in a small group. What's really interesting in this, guys, gather in. What's really interesting in this, and I've wrestled with trying to work out how can we explain this in different ways and things like that. And I maybe even drop the word small group. I don't even really like the word small group. It doesn't really matter. The Christian life can only be done in community. It can only be done. There's no such thing as a lone Christian. Well, there is. They're just very lonely and they get isolated. In fact, our staff team, when I was a trainee vicar, my training vicar, he always used to say to me, particularly when we had a big event coming up, he'd say, guys, gather in. And he'd say to us as a staff team, he said, I don't like giving pep talks much, but this is the moment for me to give you a pep talk now. Just to let you know that when you're under pressure, the devil will want to try and pick you off. He'll want to try and isolate you and marginalize you. He'll want to try and make you feel that no one cares about me, no one's thinking about me, no one knows what I'm going through. And he says, just be alert to that and make sure that you gather in with the flock again. Gather in with the people of God again. And I say that to our staff team now. But actually I say to that as a church as well. You need to be in community with each other. On those David Attenborough programs, when you see if they do something of the wildebeest or some deer or something, and you see these wolves, and the wolves always head and try and isolate, try and pick a weak one off. And actually, when they gather back together in the community, then they get strengthened, they get encouraged. And it creates an environment where we can begin to say, everything's not all right. We can share with one another. You can't really share with 300 people, but you can in a smaller community. So you don't even need to call it small group. Whatever it might be, just some community that you're going to do this term, as Ruben was mentioning earlier. And I can't urge you enough, but I would love for us, as the family here at St. Matt's, just to make small group happen. You might think, I can't do Thursday nights. I can't do Tuesday morning. It just doesn't work for me. Just find a day that does work for you and find a group of people who are going to work with you. It doesn't have to be rocket science. You just might gather 2 or 3 buddies. Don't wait for someone to invite you. You do the inviting. In fact, one of the only reasons that I'm a vicar is I sense the Lord saying, stop waiting for someone else to lead you. Why don't you step up, take responsibility for your Christian life and just start to lead? Just gather a few buddies together. I mean, there must be some time when all of us can get together with a little crew of people and step up and stand up in our generation and just say, yeah, this is how I'm going to live my life. Anyone want to join me for a coffee and we can just chat about life together and we can pray for each other? Maybe I found this great book. Anyone want to join me? Because we're going to gather together on Thursday nights or Wednesday mornings or a little breakfast group fortnightly because you've got to do life together. You've got to grab a topsail halyard. So when you get thrown overboard and a storm is coming into your life and a storm is coming into my life, that's non-negotiable. The question is, are you going to have a topsail halyard to be able to hold on to keep you connected with the boat and help to haul you back on board? And the final thing is our little lens here is dream team. Turn to your neighbor and say, you need to be in a team. Turn to your neighbor and say, you need to be in a team. Again, teams, we want everyone to sort of play a part here in the life of our church family. And that comes into my final point, which is this. Own your role. Can I have a final point on there? Own your role. Yeah, just leave this on the screen. That would be great. Own your role. St. Paul says this. He says, not only do you need to jump on board if you want to experience what it's like to go sailing, if you want to experience the Christian life in all its fullness, if you want to get out on wilder seas where storms will show God's mastery, not only do you have to hold on tight when the storms of life happen, don't get distracted, don't fall away, come back in, gather in. But then also you need to own a role. You need to own your role. All of us have different gifts and skills and abilities. One of the things that I love about that picture of Cascalot, that great boat, is that everyone had a very key role there. And to make one of those tall ships sail really well, everyone owns their role. It's like, I'm on the whatever it is. I'm on the topsail halyards, or I'm on the rudder, or I'm the guy or the girl who owns this part of the ship. And what would it look like if we had a community of people here, everyone owning a particular role? Like everyone just knowing, this year, I'm just, the kids' church, like that is my group. Like the toddlers in kids' church, like they're gonna be the most fired up toddlers in the universe. Like these toddlers are just gonna be going for it with the Lord. Or maybe your thing is cafe. You're like, man, the coffee here, like we could take it up 10 notches and I'm gonna own that. And I'm gonna gather some people around because that's my role. Or maybe it's welcome. You're like, oh, it's not very welcoming here. Like this place isn't very, you're gonna nail that area of welcome. In fact, if you ever find an area of church that you think, oh, that's not very good, you're being given a decision. You're being given a choice. You either follow the way of the devil where you begin to dial out and you say, oh, they're not friendly, or they're not this or that, or it's a call from God because he's put a purpose and a vision and a plan in your heart where you're going to become the solution to that. You're going to be the one who just nails that particular area of the life of this church, of the life of the ship. And there's something for everyone in there. What I'd love everyone at St. Matt's, and again, this is a bit of a family chat, so if you're not a regular member of St. Matt's, you can sort of dial out, although I'd encourage you in your own church to pick a role and just own it. Don't be a consumer. Don't be a spectator. Be a player. In fact, in the game of football, what is it, 21 people in desperate need of a rest, watched by 21,000 people in desperate need of some exercise, and the church is sort of similar in that. But I'd encourage everyone to find one service, one Sunday where we can serve. Just pick it. Maybe you say, right, the first Sunday of the month at the 10, I'm there. In fact, I'm going to be there at 8:30 because I'm helping on kids' team. Or no, it's going to be the last Sunday of every month, or in the evening, I'm at the 6. I'm just nailing that. I'm on welcome, and like I'm going to ensure there's like 15 people on the welcome team, and that's just my team. We're going to be the best team. We're going to show every other team how to be a team. I'm going to own that role. And I want to introduce to you, as I come into land on this talk, some people who are already on teams. So if those guys can come forward, I'm going to introduce you to just a few people in the church already who are playing a part and are on some sort of team. And hopefully that will envision and inspire each of you. And as they come to the front, on your seats, there should be these Join the Adventure cards and also a little giving envelope. And some of you might think, giving, like I'm a student here, I'm skint. But actually even something like £1 a week. You say, actually, if I can get a beer in the pub, even at Wetherspoons, how much is a beer in Wetherspoons now? 280, look, straight out, 280. Definitely 280. Definitely, 100%. I mean, that was quick, wasn't it? So 280. So if I can get a beer in Wetherspoons for 280, couldn't I give God back a little bit of what he's given to me to bind into his community? And at the end of this, there'll be an opportunity. So first up, Wills, tell us, how long have you been a Christian for?
I've been a Christian, well, I was born into a Christian family, but I really only started to get to know God, I'd say, in my early teens. So, 5 or 10 years-ish.
5 or 10, give or take, like... How old are you, Wills?
I'm 20 years old.
Amazing, okay. That's quite a lot. 5 or 10 is quite a lot in that sort of... Anyway. And what difference does your relationship with Jesus make to you?
I don't know, it just like kind of, it gives you a reason to live, it gives you a purpose to everything you do in your life. You've got a reason to wake up, and you've got that hope at the end of it all. And everything you do, you can do for the glory of God. Amazing.
And are you happy to share that other little thing that we mentioned or not? So Will's shared with me last Sunday, actually. We had a little connection and a little pray together. He just shared something that he was going through. Share a little bit, Wills.
Okay, so a couple of years ago, I worked as a water sports instructor at a camp in New York in the United States. And I became really good friends with a guy out there called Charlie. And I got the news earlier this week that he'd been involved in a car accident. And on Wednesday morning, they turned his life support off, and he was passed on to God. And so I found myself a lot this week asking, why? And I think every single person who calls Jesus their king will at some point find themselves saying, why, But as Olly put it, really lovely. He said, I've read the last chapter of the book. I know how this is going to end. So even though we're not meant to know why Jesus is, working this way in my life, I'm not meant to know why this is happening, I know what it's all for. I know what's at the end of it. And that keeps you going. That comforts you through absolutely everything, I believe.
Amazing, so good. Now, Wills, you help on a team here. Tell us, what team do you help on, and why on earth do you give up your time to help on a team?
So I am a drummer, so you might see me at the back. I'm hitting things, trying to do that well. I do that because I believe God gave me the gift of just being able to do that. But I think that every single person has got something they can offer. Every single person's got a gift. Mine just happens to be drums, but yours could be absolutely anything. You might be good with people. You might be good, really hospitable and great at serving coffee. There's nothing that's more important than another. And so I love serving in that way. That's something I enjoy doing. But it's certainly not something that is more or less important. Everything, I believe every single person has got a role that they can offer. So.
Amazing. We'll stay up here for a second. Emily, tell us, how long have you been a Christian for?
Well, I grew up being a Christian my whole life, really, but sort of at 18, went off with an organisation called Youth for the Mission, and that was really where my faith became my own, I would say.
And what difference would you say Jesus makes in your life on a daily basis?
Honestly, I don't know where to begin with that question, but a big thing for me is I think I'm quite an anxious person. I like to try and do things and be independent, but actually I know that when I'm feeling overwhelmed and anxious that I can just talk to God and he gives me so much peace.
Now, Emily, you've been with us actually since the beginning pretty much, and you lead a very busy life. You're a trainee midwife, and that's quite a full-on course that you're doing. But you've also helped on a number of teams since you've been here. I think you're on our prayer team at the moment, leading, I think, one of our prayer team leaders, and also you help on the student team. Why do you do that, particularly in your busy schedule? Share a bit about that.
Honestly, I think it's slightly selfish because I actually find when if I'm having a bad day, if I pray for someone, I'm like, oh yeah, God is faithful and he is good. And almost by pouring out to other people, I realize myself how good God is. And I think also I'm a big fan of doing life in Christian community. I think it's super important. So being on a team with other Christians inspires me to walk my faith life better.
Amazing. Thank you, Emily. Henry, come and join us. So Henry, tell us, how long have you been like these guys? You've been Christian all your life and everything like that?
Not at all, no. I've been a Christian for 2 years now, maybe. Yeah, same as St. Matt's birthday, I guess. So yeah, 2 years.
Tell us a little bit very briefly how you came to faith.
Briefly, I was in New Zealand, I broke down, got saved by, not in that Christian sense, but in the literal sense, by Christian Surfers New Zealand. Then came here, went to Alpha, was promised food and girls by a friend. It was a great way to get me there, to be fair.
That's not their national branding, food and girls.
And now I'm running Christian Surfers Plymouth with my friends, so yeah.
Amazing. And what difference does Jesus make to your life?
It wasn't like a huge thing. It wasn't like suddenly I felt like a different person. It's more like whenever I'm feeling anxious or upset, it's like someone putting a hand on my back. Or if I'm feeling angry, it's someone telling me to chill out a little bit. Or yeah, something like that, really.
So good. And you've actually helped on, I think, you set up one of our small groups, our small group team, and I think you helped with the student team. Tell us, why do you do that? Because, again, you're a busy guy. I'm sure there's lots of other things you could be doing with your time. Why do you help on a team?
It's really sociable, to be honest with you. It's really great to meet up with fellow Christians and just chat and have a great time, really, yeah. Sociable.
So good. Thank you, Henry. And Alia, tell us, have you always been into Christianity, and when did you become a Christian?
So I've been a Christian most of my life, but I think it was more so when I was about 8, I had a calling from God saying, welcome me into your life, and I did, and I started experimenting and playing around with prayer, and it's all kind of grown since then.
And what difference does Jesus make to your life on a sort of daily basis?
I think it's that feeling of safety, like you said last week, God being the safe, strong tower, and it's if times get hard, you're not alone, and you've got someone to go to and cast your anxieties on because he cares for you.
And tell us, what team are you on? How long have you been on that team for, and why do you do that?
So I've been on the hosting team for 4 months now, and I had a vision a few months ago before I joined, and it was almost that calling of God saying, get more involved and grow your faith, and it really has, and you get to know so many people, and it's just so good.
So good, Alia. Thank you so much. And Agogo, tell us, have you always been into Christianity and a Christian?
I've been a Christian since as far as I can remember, but there's been a pivotal moment when I was in sixth form where I had moved to a totally different school, and a lot of people had abandoned me. I felt really alone at that time. A lot of people had deserted me, and my family I can count on usually all the time to like at least one person, my brother, my sister, or my mom and dad, to like get me at that time. But even at that time, they didn't really understand what was going on because my grades were hitting rock bottom. And then it was at that point, after a while of just like looking around and thinking, I had been doing quite well in my grades and everything. It's like, oh, my grades are down. There's not really anyone around here to support me. And I was like, wow, life is so fleeting. Like the only thing which is actually stable is Jesus. So it just was kind of like a eureka moment. And it's that song like, on Christ, the solid rock I stand, all over ground is sinking sand. And I just realized that God has been so good, and just, he's the only stable person, really. He's the only stability in this world.
Amazing. And connected with that then, going on from that, what difference does Jesus make in your life on a sort of personal basis?
I think Jesus gives you purpose in life, because when you don't have Jesus, you don't really know what you're living for. But when you have Jesus, you know this, again, like what I said, this world is temporary. You're living for something in the future. So if something goes wrong in life, it's not like, oh, life is down, horrible, because it's like, oh, you have that constant joy in your heart. And Jesus has also blessed me more than I could ever imagine. So I went through a really hard time, but then afterwards, Jesus just lifted me straight up when I trusted in him. So he's just good, yeah.
So good. Now, I think you're studying medicine, so that's quite a full-on course. But now you're also serving on a team, on the student team. Like, why do you do that? How can you cram that? How can you put that in? Why have you made that a priority in your life?
I think like God is good, and I want to share that with other people, because without Jesus, like, life can be very bleak and without hope. But with Jesus, there's so much hope. So I work on the students team. I just want to tell like students out there, like, literally, Jesus does change your life. And with him comes so much joy, peace, rest, hope, just so much. So I joined that to kind of share my own, because I know how much he's changed my life, so I wanted him to change other lives too.
Amazing. Should we give these guys a round of applause? Let's give these guys a round. Thank you guys very much. So just as I come into land on this talk tonight, sorry, I've rattled on a little bit, and thank you to those guys there. But I sort of get so excited by thinking, what would it look like that picture of that ship, if everyone had a role. Some people, you might try a role for a while, you might think, I don't know what to do, we'll just grab something and just start on that, and then you might change everything. But what would it look like if every single person, that like you could talk to anyone at St. Matt's and they go, yeah, my personal joke, yeah, I connect, I know Jesus and I connect with him. That yeah, the 6 is that's my service, nothing, wild horses wouldn't keep me from there. That my small group, let me tell you about my small group and the friendships that we're growing in there, and the team, let me tell you about my team and the character, like that's our team, we nail that, we're the 3s to 5s Sunday mornings in the kids group, like those kids are firing on all cylinders because we're part of that team. What would that look like? And as I said, just as I come into land, St. Paul also adds in there some attributes, some qualities, some characteristics with which we are encouraged to serve with. Not just in church, but actually in life in general. He says this, he says that we should be generous people. Can we have a slide on there, please? He says that we should be generous. Have we got that slide at the end there? Generously. Can you say generous? I mean, imagine that if the St. Matt's family here, we became known as just generous people. That actually we give our housemates the benefit of the doubt. Like when they don't clean up, we're the guys who just wash up. We're like, we whistle while we clean up rather than go, I wish they'd flipping clean up. We've done it. And they go, wow, who cleaned up? No, it's okay, no problem. I mean, me actually, but no problem, no problem. That actually when someone is bad-mouthing us, we don't fire back in retaliation. We're just generous people. That we give our time generously. That we give gifts generously. That we give hospitality generously. That we include people. We widen the circle. We're generous people. We're diligent people. Diligent. Can you say diligent? Diligent. I think that's key in today's world. I've noticed now if you're invited to a party, in my day when I was growing up, and I'm much older than some of you, you just reply yes or no. Today, I've worked out, like you might get a handwritten thing. I mean, that's quite rare now. You maybe get a Facebook invite, then maybe something through Insta, then something on email as well, and you're still going maybe. Like, that's not diligent. Yeah, count me in. I'm going to let my yes be yes and my no be no. That when I'm on a team, I'm there, I'm fired up, I'm good to go, I'm prayed up. I'm excited. And the final thing is cheerfully. Can you turn to your neighbor and say, cheer up, cheer up, cheerfully. What would it look like if we saw a community of people here in Plymouth? A community of people who had jumped on board. You've seen the ship and you're like, I'm getting on that boat. I'm ready for a life, not in the harbor, but out on the ocean seas. I want to go and explore some far off lands. Some of you, that might be literally. God's going to call you into different parts of this world. For others of us, it's just spiritually. He wants to take us to places that you've never before imagined. In fact, the scriptures say that God is able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine. A community of people who are holding tight. We're not drifters. When we get knocked out of the boat, we grab onto a topsail halyard. We've got those things in place. And you're like, I don't care, whatever. Even if I'm sundry fathoms under the sea, I'm holding on to this thing. And I'm going to come back out on top and get back in the boat again. And there are people who are owning our role. They're out on the front door, or we're on the cafe team, or we're on the prayer team, or we're on the student team. We were like, yeah, this is my role. I'm going to show everyone else how to do this role. I own this role. This is my role. This is what God's created me for. And I might be growing and I might try on a different role later on, but this is my role. Imagine what would happen if we saw a community of people like that. And as I come into land, I love each one of you just to check in your own head and heart. Just allow God to speak to you and say, come on. It's enough spectating now. Get in the game. Get on the boat. I've got adventures for you and me to go on together. Would you like to stand?